Good morning. Welcome to the Morning Scoop for Thursday, January 21st. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Minnesota game is in 224 days. The game against Michigan in 310 days. And yes, that is the same magic number that Jim Tressel said about 20 years ago earlier this week. So 310 days in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Ohio State and Michigan will play once again. You could also add another number to that countdown, 13 days until National Signing Day. Buckeyes have most of their 2021 class already signed. There are a couple top 50 prospects who they still have an opportunity to add, including one that looked like something of a lost cause as recently as maybe even a few days ago. My guest today is Buckeye Scoop recruiting analyst Alex Gleitman. Alex, the race for top 50 2021 linebacker Raesjon Davis, that it took, as recruiting can happen with recruiting, that race took an interesting turn on Wednesday, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Greg Biggins of 24/7 Sports, who's one of the best in the business period, but certainly one of the best out in the West Coast. Used to cover the Semper Fidelis All-American Bowl for 24/7 Sports when he was at Scout, and we used to hang out a little bit out there. He reported that Raesjon will be headed to Ohio State this weekend for I don't even want to call it an unofficial visit because no visits can happen as far as meeting with the staff and going into any of the football facilities, but let's call it a nice stroll around campus in the town of Columbus with his parents. Now, Raesjon has been to Ohio State before himself with the 7-on-7 team. I think it was a couple summers back. They took a trip to Columbus. So he's been to Ohio State. He's seen everything they've have to offer. He's always been a big fan of Ohio State, but his parents have not been to Ohio State. So this is a big trip because before he committed to LSU, I believe it was I think it was either January 1st of last year or the same day that they won the national championship. It looked like Ohio State was going to be, I don't want to say going to be the pick, but they were definitely one of the top schools. It was like a lot of people were even saying it's going to be Ohio State. And he surprisingly committed to LSU, stuck with it for a while, decided not to sign with the Tigers in December and still has them in consideration. But LSU's not in it. It's actually USC and Ohio State, and a lot of people have figured that Raesjon is going to be staying home and going to USC, who seems to have a little bit of renewal. Clay Helton had a nice season, went undefeated until losing in the Pac-12 championship game to Oregon. Seems to have at least saved his job for another year or two, stabilized some things there. They signed Corey Foreman, one of the top players in the country, who's really good friends with Raesjon. So things have been trending toward USC. I know Mark and Bill kind of almost called him to USC. I personally, have thought he was going to go to USC as well. And I kept saying on the boards, I think Al Washington's done a tremendous job here recruiting him. But until he gets on a plane and visits Ohio State, I don't give the Buckeyes a chance. And that seems to be happening this weekend. If he actually does get on that plane with his parents, comes out and sees Ohio State again, I think Ohio State has a good chance to land him. I'm not saying it's going to happen. We obviously have to see how this visit goes. But Mark and I were talking last night, and why make this visit? You're not coming all the way out from California on your own dime just to set up a smokescreen. You're not doing that. This isn't the type of kid who would do that, in my opinion, anyway. But I don't think many kids would fly across the country to set a smokescreen. Maybe go to UCLA, maybe go to Oregon, Arizona State, something along those lines. But don't come on your own dime across the country in the middle of a global pandemic to set a smokescreen. So I think it's one of two things. Either USC is his pick, and he just wants to be 1,000% sure, or his parents want him to be 1,000% sure. You really loved Ohio State. Great relationship with Coach Washington. Let's go see Ohio State one more time just to make sure USC is the pick. Or I think there is a split household where maybe the kid wants to go to Ohio State. Maybe one of the parents are okay with that, but maybe the other parent doesn't want him to go so far away from home, or both parents, don't want him to go so far away from home. I don't know that for a fact. This is just speculation based on, my history covering the stuff. And, if that's the case, maybe if Raesjon says, I really want to go to Ohio State, mom and dad, please come out, see Ohio State, and then let's make a decision together. At least once you see it, you have a realistic viewpoint on it. That could be a scenario. So I think it's one of those two things. And either way, I think Ohio State now at least has a fighting chance. The staff won't get to spend time with him and his family, which is definitely a loss. like an official visit this late in the game would have helped them. But I do think, I know they can be on the phone with them. They can kind of talk about things, tell them where to go, point out some things. Again, talk to them on the phone, messaging as much as they want. So it's going to be interesting to see how this weekend goes. But Ohio State, I would call them now officially back in the game for Raesjon Davis.
Yeah, I mean, there are two kind of truisms with recruiting that have hold true pretty much no matter what. And one is a lot of it comes down to relationships. And as you said, Al Washington has done a heck of a job recruiting and building that relationship with Raesjon Davis. The other thing is look at what they do, not what they say. That is one of the absolute, you can throw up a smoke screen and, oh, look, he's followed all the coaches from Arizona State. That takes 6 clicks of a button on Twitter. Like that doesn't tell me anything. Getting on an airplane with your mom and dad and flying literally all the way across the country in January on your own dime, like, okay, now you have my attention. So if we're assuming that this is at least a viable option for Ohio State, a possibility that this may be someone who ends up a Buckeye, give people a little bit of a scouting report on Davis. And he's a linebacker. What kind of linebacker is he? Where he might fit in with the Buckeyes if he does sign?
Yeah, I mean he's everything you want in a modern day linebacker. I mean he's a kid who can come up, stuff the gaps, play the run, and he's also a guy who's athletic enough and fast enough to not only run sideline to sideline, but play in coverage, which is a big part of today's game. I mean he's 6'1", about 215 pounds. I think right now he probably fits on the outside. You think you come in at 215. What is Coach Mick going to do with you? He'll probably be up to 230, 235 in no time. But as long as he could keep that athleticism and speed and ability to stay with running backs and tight ends in the passing game, I think that's probably a good size for him to play at. And I think he could play outside there. And I think even in today's game, I think he could maybe even slide in inside. I think he's a really smart player. He's got a good football IQ. I think he can be the captain of the defense in the middle, and he's athletic enough, as I said, to stay with running backs. Not throwing Tough Borland under the bus, and he was probably put in an unfair position trying to stay with Devontae Smith in the championship game. But that's not something he was really capable of. And I think Raesjon Davis could be. I also think, he can get to the size and has the physical ability to play the run really well. So he's a kid. I think the key when you talk about Kerry Coombs and what he's looking for on the defensive side of the ball is versatility. You see the versatility with some of the defensive backs they have. You see it with some of the linebackers, a guy like Dallas Gant. I think that might even be a good comparison, is a Dallas Gant type player who played outside early in his career, now has slid to the Mike linebacker position. He could play in space. He could play the run. So, I think this is a legitimate kid. I think he's ranked, what is it? The composite has him in the top 50, something like that. I think, he's a top 50 type of kid. And with Ohio State losing a bunch of linebackers this year, veteran, their top 4 linebackers, this would be a great get for them late in the process.
Yeah, he is a top 50 player. He's one of the 2 guys that they are kind of potentially looking at to possibly add, for the 2021 class. Most of the hay is in the barn for the 2021 class. Davis is one guy Ohio State's looking to add. The other big name out there right now still is 5-star defensive lineman JT Tuimoloau out of the state of Washington. We've talked about him a whole lot more than we have about Davis. That sounds like a recruitment that's still, the indication is right that is probably not something that Ohio State fans should expect to have a final answer on signing day in 2 weeks, correct?
Yeah, that's what we're hearing. We're hearing that he would love to take visits. And supposedly that's supposed to happen in the middle of April. I am not sold that will happen. I just, I until I see the NCAA open it up, I'm just not believing it. I think, I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens if things don't open up in April. What does JT do at that point? You're sitting there. Are you going to wait even longer till June? I don't think he could do that. I think, I don't think he's going to sign on National Signing Day, February 3rd. But I do think it's something to watch as far as, what happens if the April visits, if it looks like we'll probably know in March if things aren't going to open up on April 15th. So I think that's probably more of a timeline for people to watch. But, as far as Ohio State goes, I don't know if it's a great. I think they are the leader in the clubhouse right now, but why not sign and commit right now then? I think that there's still some work to be done to bring in Mariano Rivera and close this thing out.
We'll see. I guess we're going to find out how good Larry Johnson's cutter is. And Larry Johnson does have more than one pitch. So in that way, he may be even greater than Mariano Rivera, who is only the first unanimous Hall of Famer. So big shoes to fill there. I always forget you're a Yankees fan. Ugh, the worst. Next, one more 5-star we got to talk about. Someone who seemed like he might have been a little bit of a lost cause at one point. I mean, a little bit like Davis, where all of a sudden now it sounds like the Buckeyes are making a serious run at him. Let people know a little bit about Will Johnson. He's a cornerback. This is class of 2022, so you got a whole nother year to hear about him. But let people know a little bit about Will Johnson and his background.
Yeah, he's a stud. 6'3", 190 pounds, can play cornerback. Some people, think had to play safety as well. His dad was former Michigan safety Deion Johnson, played in the early 90s for the Wolverines. And so, obviously, whenever that happens, just as it would with Ohio State, the assumption has been that Will Johnson's going to end up at the University of Michigan. He's in the Detroit suburbs. He grew up, a Michigan fan, right down the street. I don't want to say right down the street, but obviously within an arm's length of Ann Arbor in the Detroit suburban area. And, this has pretty much been thought to have been a done deal for quite some time, even though it's relatively early in the 2022 process. But lately I'm hearing some different things on that front. I actually heard earlier in the fall that Ohio State had some people around Ohio State, I shouldn't say everyone, had a quiet confidence around Will Johnson. But then he made that visit to Michigan. They had, I don't know what they called it. Ohio State had a Buckeye Bash and Oklahoma had a Sooner Summit, kind of an unofficial gathering of 2021, 2022 commits. Damani Jackson from California came out. Will Johnson was there. J.J. McCarthy, the quarterback signee for 2021, was there. A number of others. And coming out of that trip, I mean, everyone was saying, Will Johnson, done deal to Michigan. It's happening. It's over. Will did take a visit to Ohio State. I think it was the following weekend or 2 weeks after. It was supposed to be the weekend Ohio State was going to play Michigan. Obviously, that game got canceled, but Will and his parents took a trip down. And I think, myself and many others kind of said, okay, that was just a check the box visit. We saw Ohio State, we got there, but it's probably going to go Michigan's way. And as I said, now I'm starting to hear some different things. I don't know what exactly it is. From what I understand, it's kind of the uncertainty around Jim Harbaugh. Obviously, when the head coach of a school gets his salary cut in half and his buyout taken away, it's not really a vote of confidence from the president, athletic director, board of trustees at the University of Michigan. So I think the future is a little uncertain there. Michigan does have a new defensive backs coach. They do have a new defensive coordinator. Pretty much, I think 4/5 or something like that of the defensive staff has turned over. So when you talk about the relationships he had there, I don't think that that's the case anymore. And there was a couple guys that many people thought what Michigan might hire that were Detroit area guys that would resonate really well with Will, and that's not who they ended up going with. So I think they're kind of starting over in the relationship front when it comes to Will Johnson, which isn't really a great thing to do. You can't really lean on that legacy thing too much when a kid has a good head on his shoulders and is thinking about, what's the best decision for me and not necessarily thinking with his heart. And then you got Kerry Coombs, who's amazing in the Detroit area, let alone at his own position group with the defensive backs. And he's been building that relationship for a while. Ryan Day is involved in that one as well. And so, I think Ohio State, just from a relationship standpoint, a proven track record of being able to show that they can produce not only NFL cornerbacks, but first round NFL cornerbacks who are performing at a very high level at once they get to the NFL. And a lot of those guys played under Coombs. I just think from location standpoint, USC is in this one too, but I just don't see him going there. I think it's going to be Ohio State or Michigan. And I think all the cards are kind of playing into Ohio State's hands. Some people around Ohio State are getting more confident. And the thing that kind of got me really on this one was I talked to some people who are connected to the Michigan staff, and they seem to think Ohio State is in the driver's seat right now. So There's supposed to be a decision coming within the next month or two. I'm not completely sold on that. I think this thing could go a little bit longer. I think obviously the sooner the better for Ohio State because I think they're in a good position right now. But, it's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out.
Well, and it would be huge to add him to this class because you got to remember they already have a 5-star cornerback committed for 2022. That's Jaheim Singletary. He's out of Tampa, Florida, or Jacksonville, Florida. He's somewhere out of Florida. It's a big state. But I mean, what would that mean? I mean, we just saw an Ohio State team that got kind of derailed by not having a couple, enough high-level corners to really be able to play the kind of defense they would want to play. What would that mean to land a pair of 5-star corners in the same class if Kerry Combs is able to pull that off?
Yeah, how about Jair Brown too? I mean, high 4-star corner now, in the Cincinnati area, but was down in Louisiana before, had offers from LSU, Alabama, every big program. I think the three of them, it's very, very clear if you watch Ohio State football, they just do not have the talent, the depth of talent in the secondary like they've had in the past. There's a lot of question marks even going into next year. That unit obviously did not play well this year. There's a lot of guys who need to kind of show that they take the jump. I mean, the Seven Banks, Cam Brown coming back from injury. Where's Tyreek Johnson? I mean, does Marcus Williamson in the slot take a jump? Some of the younger guys, Legend Cavazos and Ryan Watts, do they, develop into the players that Ohio State thinks they can become? And so I think, the 2021 and 2022 classes are absolutely key for the future of Ohio State's success, not only on defense, just overall as a team. Because if you look at cornerback recruiting specifically, in the years Kerry Coombs was gone, it was not very good, and that's why they're in the position they are today. So I think they had a great start with Jordan Hancock and J.K. Johnson and Denzel Burke and a couple of the other guys they brought in 2021. But I think following up, with potentially 2 5-star guys and a really high 4-star guy in 2022 gets the room back where it needs to be for Ohio State to be an elite defense and kind of another run of future first-round picks at cornerback.
Yeah, I mean, this year's defense was kind of a result of a bunch of weird things all happening at once, and late decommitments, some off-the-field issues, a bunch of stuff sort of added up to that shortfall in that cornerback room. You may remember the last time Ohio State recorded a couple 5-star corners in the same class, a guy named Jeff Okudah and a guy named Sean Wade. And that 2019 defense was pretty okay in the cornerback spot. So in case you're wondering exactly, are we making too big a deal of this? No, probably not. That can completely change what you can do on defense if you've got a couple lockdown corners in the same class. So, Alex, thank you very much for joining us. Boy, there is a lot going on right now. It's like, oh, it's the off season. Like, no, there's no. This is Ohio State football. There is no off season. It just keeps rolling. We'll head into National Signing Day in 13 days. Spring football will start rolling not that long after that, and then all of a sudden, boom! It'll be summertime. And we'll be ramping up for another season of Ohio State football. Wouldn't it be a great time to become a member at BuckeyeScoop.com for the price of just make yourself coffee at home instead of picking it up at the drive-thru a couple times a month, and you get coverage that you just can't find anywhere else. Recruiting stuff, inside the program stuff. There's going to be a busy year in the transfer portal. There's going to be a ton to talk about all year long, especially on our Ask the Insiders board at BuckeyeScoop.com. Consider becoming a member today. Also, make sure you check out all of our great podcasts: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spotify. Alex, I forgot to let you plug it. Alex is going to have on Mark Givler on his Around the Oval podcast to talk about a little more detail on Davis, some of these other high-profile recruitments that the Buckeyes are in on right now. It is going to be quite a busy week, and might be some interesting news coming out in the next week or two and in the lead up to National Signing Day. So make sure you check that all out at BuckeyeScoop.com. Search for Buckeye Scoop on your podcast platform of choice to find all of our great shows. Subscribe right there. Leave us a 5-star rating and review while you're at it. Thank you guys for joining us. Have a great day. We will talk to you tomorrow.